With respect to the season, obviously we're disappointed that we are not still playing, just like every team that is not in the playoffs anymore. If I had to define the year in a couple words, I would say capability and inconsistency. For 70% of this past season, we were playing at an extremely high level, and I felt like we were playing some of the better basketball that we've seen in Oklahoma City, just with respect to the style of play goals we laid out, the defensive improvement that we tried to establish from last year to this year, pace of play, athleticism. I really felt like the players and the coaches were doing an excellent job of that. And they created an extremely high standard. We were on our way to having the third best record in the league against the top 10 teams in the league. We were playing a really balanced game. And, unfortunately, that seems like a long time ago because 30% of the year or so, we struggled to meet our own standard, and that's, I think, use the word disappointing. I think disappointing is the end. I would use the word frustrating to define really the month of March, because when you show that you're capable and you come into the year with a vision or a plan for how you want to try to be better from one year to the next, and you're executing and you come back and you're not able to meet that, I mean, that's something we have to own. So the month of March is probably the thing that we'll look at the closest, pre-All-Star, post-All-Star, 38-20. And then 11-13, but really 6-13 in the month of March before we won 5 in a row heading into the playoffs. But unfortunately, that last little stretch there wasn't enough to kind of correct ourselves, and we ended up getting beat by a really good Portland team. So we have to study that month of March. With respect to the team, so coming into the year, I felt like we were positioned pretty well from a depth standpoint. Last year when we sat here, I think majority of the questions were about our defense in the second half. So we really focused on that. And I felt like we had really good redundancy behind Robertson. In the event he was slow to return, obviously we couldn't have foreseen that he was going to miss the whole year. And I thought Ferguson and Diallo during the first part of the year did an excellent job. We ended up as the 4th best defense in the league, and that's with pretty big slippage in the month of March. I think if we were more consistent in that month, we might have been a little bit higher, but top 5 is obviously good enough. The spot on the roster, to me, that we didn't have redundancy and continued support was when we lost Alex. And that's on me. That's on me. I thought Alex was going to have a breakout year, to be honest with you, and be a pretty big part to this team. He made huge strides. Once we got into March, we started to feel his absence more. And I didn't have somebody else that could step in that was sitting on the end of the bench. And as I said before, once Wes Matthews went to Indiana, there really wasn't a lot of other options out there. There's no perfect team. And as I said earlier, majority of the questions last year about the defense, getting that corrected. The offseason, the key for us, it always is the same. It's, okay, how do we create a path forward? How do we create as many options as possible? To be honest with you, going into year 12 after 11 years and being in the playoffs 9 out of 10 years, with changes all around us, it gets harder and harder. I can only tell you that we're going to look for literally every single way to improve the team, both externally and internally, but that's no different. And I personally, I love the puzzle. I love the challenge. I love this time of year. I love the opportunity to be with the people that I work with to try to solve these things. There's a price to the longevity that we've established, and we got to keep grinding and figure out ways to make it last longer. This will be the first time in 4 years that we aren't entering the summer trying to convince a franchise player not to go to a bigger market. So I'd say that's welcome on our end of things. When you're going through those things, I think it's relatively unprecedented that an organization has faced that 4 years in a row. I'm proud of the way we've navigated that, even though sometimes it hasn't gone our way.
You said you will give Billy some distance and you guys will talk. Can you just clarify, what his status is in
Sure,
terms of coaching.
sure, yeah. So, we anticipate Billy being back. If anything were to change on that, we would have let you know. And I know some of you guys have had questions about that. But for us, for me personally, I always think that it's important to give the coach of the team time to reflect and decompress. These jobs are really, really hard. I wouldn't expect anything to change. As I said, that might be the one thing you did miss. As I said, nothing changes. I haven't had a chance to sit down with him. I do think getting his perspective on things is important because there's nobody that works harder than him. If anything, I think he needs to take some time to think through the season himself and have a really good conversation. Well, I think every team's always changing, and our job isn't to just sit here and react to things. It's to be methodical as we go through things, understand, how we can get better, what the plan is for that. Last season, we could have said, listen, the team's not good enough defensively, and we put our heads together and became a better defensive team. But the margins for error are small, and in the Western Conference for sure. But to me, that's one of the things about competition that doesn't bother me. Sometimes you lose. Competing doesn't mean you only compete when the wind's at your back. And so, yeah, listen, we're not entitled to anything. We don't come into the year expecting to just automatically be served up, opportunities to play in the playoffs. You got to earn those. But you also got to perform when you get there, and we haven't done that. So we got to figure out what that is. And we've never been shy about the fact that we got to go out and do the work, study it, and make the best decisions for the future of the franchise and the health of the franchise, and that's what we intend to do. I think he does a really good job, but these jobs are really hard, and you can draw up the best plays, or you can put together what you feel is a really good team, and sometimes it doesn't come to fruition because there's so many other competing factors and forces that are at play.
Committing to the big luxury tax, all that stuff. Is their appetite for that still as strong as ever in the wake of 3 straight first-round exits?
All those decisions, all of those conversations happen after the season. So I can't give you a specific answer to that. We'll sit down and debrief. I know that, when we're for 70% of the season, we're playing at that level and we're showing the capability and having, PG and Russell Westbrook in Oklahoma City, that was really important. And I think our owners deserve an immense amount of credit for a couple of things. Number one, recognizing the opportunity to have, 2 players like that in the second smallest market, understanding that to convince those guys to be here and to sign on takes a lot, in this day and age, and in what the NBA has become. I think they also understand that that's also a sign of not only to the current players, but I think it's also an indication to future players down the line in different eras of the team that in Oklahoma City, we're going to do everything we can to try to A, create an environment where you can be at your best, and B, try to win. And so I think that it's twofold in that respect. But yeah, we could chop it up in hindsight and say, this should have happened, that should have happened. Essentially we're paying for the opportunity to have those players. The alternative would be to not have those guys, in Oklahoma City, because there'd be plenty of places that would love to have them.
Last week, Dennis said, that Billy's a guy who listens to players, and there's good and bad in that. And sometimes when he listens too much, it can go the wrong way. And I wonder if do you feel like there's a strong culture of accountability here, and if not, is it something you would want to discuss?
Yeah, so, I think every coach has their own voice. Every coach has their own style. I don't know everything that Dennis said.
He's a good coach. He likes to, or he listens to his players. Great guy, you know. I've been with him 1 year. You know, I can't really say a lot more, but I mean, I like what he did this year, and.
You mentioned that Billy listens to his players, and that's something we've heard from several of your teammates. How rare is that, and what does that do? How does that change things for a team?
I mean, it can go either way, to be honest. I never had that before. I've been with Coach Budenholzer in Atlanta, and he got a strong opinion about what he want to do. And, I mean, I got used to it because, you know, I wasn't in the NBA before, so my first year started with him, and he got a strong belief. The San Antonio kind of system, and he's a good coach, you know, and I like that he keeps everyone accountable, and like he got his own way. Billy is kind of rare. I never had it before, and it can go either way, I think, you know, and it goes too much and you listen too much to the players, then it can go bad as well. So, but like I said, me and him had good conversations, and I mean, I never tried to, you know, change anything. So we had never no issues. So I mean, he's been great with me, and that's all I can say.
But at the end of the day, you know, Billy's in charge of what takes place on the floor, and ultimately charting the path as to, you know, what's going to get the best performance out of the team. Clearly, like there are times where we're playing an extremely high level, 70% of the year, and he was obviously hitting the right buttons, and you know, you weren't not you specifically, but those questions weren't being asked. But you lose in the first round, and as I said before, everything gets magnified. That's part of it. And so we'll sit down, and these are some of the things that, like, when you sit down with a coach, you want to hear, like, what do you think? How can we get better? What do you think about the team? You know, how do we go into off season into season, laying out those goals and hitting them? You know, I think the big question for us is, we established this level and this standard coming in. Something was different. We have the baseline to measure, and like, I just think understanding what that is, not saying, you know, specifically like, okay, like individually, but as a group, because everything touches that stuff. And no one's better to have that opinion, or that I want to hear, than Billy's, because he's the person that's managing that on a regular basis, kind of, you know, and dealing with the group. And he's done a really good job while he's been here. So I'd like to hear that, and you know, figure out what we're going to do, you know, how he feels about mapping out a plan to maybe, you know, sustain it through the season.